Welcome to the Academic Book Review Community's lecture. We are here to renew the review. Academic Book Review Community is an initiative of Nord Media Network to support scholars in writing reviews on recent academic literature. I'm Maarit Jaakkola, and I'm the co-director of Nordicom, working as an editor-in-chief of Nord Media Network. And Nord Media Network is a digital platform for Nordic media researchers. I have the pleasure to work on this new venture with my Nordicom colleague, Kristin Clay.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm the manuscript editor at Nordicom, handling all the English language manuscripts that come through, including our two academic journals, Nordicom Review and Nordic Journal of Media Studies.
And in today's lecture, we are going to hear two Nordic book review editors. Ivar Jon Erdal is from Norway and Jonathan Lier is from Denmark. Ivar Jon Erdal is from Volda University, and he's book reviews editor for Norsk Media Tidskrift, that is established in 1994, and it's an open access journal since 2015. The journal is owned by the Norwegian Researcher Association, Norsk Medieforskerlag, and is published by Scandinavian University Press, that is part of Universitetsforlaget. Reviews are mainly written in Norwegian, but they can also be written in English, Danish, and Swedish. And Jonathan Lier is working at the University College Absalon in Roskilde, and he's the review editor for Media Kultur, a journal of media and communication research founded in 1985. This journal is published by SMED, Society of Media Researchers in Denmark, and reviews can be submitted in Danish, English, and all the Scandinavian languages as well. So please welcome Ivar Jon and Jonathan. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen and see if we get today's starting slide. So we're going to have a discussion on the dilemmas and potential of book reviews in media studies journals. We have been introduced already. I'm Ivar Jon, and I work at Volda University College. So this is my contact information if anybody wants to get in touch.
And this is me, Jonathan, also, and including my contact info. And as mentioned, I'm at University College Absalon and the book review at Media Kultur.
Yeah. And we have kind of prepared a couple of discussion points that we would like to touch upon in this discussion. And we will start out by discussing book review as a genre. Starting out with the question, what is a good or a bad book review? And do you have any starting points or viewpoints, Jonathan?
Yes, well, I think as we mentioned here in the slide, I think that very often the review is a little bit overlooked genre, because I think it has a lot of potential actually to open various kind of fields in a relatively short format, but maybe also get insight both into new literature within the fields that you are engaged and specialized in, and also at the same time maybe open new fields, new theoretical ideas, themes that could inspire your own research. So I also think that what is important in an academic book review is that it's not just a kind of resume and then we have a kind of verdict. Is this good or bad? Many book reviews tend to have an introduction of the author, and then you have chapter 1, blah, 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 chapter 2, blah, 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 chapter 3, blah, 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 blah. And then in the end, it's kind of good, maybe, yeah. So I mean, I would have liked a little bit more of that, but then whatever. and now I don't have any more spaces to write in my reviews, so I have to finish up. And that's a little bit a pity, I think, sometimes if you do it like that, because it doesn't maybe open up for the potential of the genre, which I think is should be much less descriptive and much more kind of engage in the debates, scientific debate that the book opens up to, and also kind of situate the book within a wider landscape of other books, of other ideas, and then try to base it in that. So it's, I tend to say that a bad review is solely descriptive and maybe with a slight judgment in the end. And then whereas I tend to see a good review would be much more that you have a also maybe contrary to a book review of fictionary books or non-fictionary books and that are not academics, that you also have this kind of discussion of what does this open up? Can we see this book in conjunction with other books that has just been published and so on? Because then it's actually within a couple of pages I can get a whole new understanding of a new field, or I can expand as a reader my understanding of the field. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Eva?
No, that's kind of that's my experience also, and I noted the word engagement. Like a good book review is engaged and trying to it discusses the book on its own terms, but also situates it in relation to the context of the general field of media studies, but also this particular subfield that the book is written on. And it also kind of has in mind what is the target audience or audiences for the book? What kind of book is this? What field does it contribute to? And what is this particular book's contribution? And I agree about the bad review. I recognize your description of a bad review as in this kind of toothless, disinterested summary of chapters with a conclusion at the end. And I also recognize some of my own book reviews in that description, I'm afraid. But also there's a different end of the spectrum also, which is the kind of overly subjective slaughter of this book is horrible because I think because it should have written the way that I want to write it. But I don't know about you, but we tend to not publish those. But
yeah, no, I think you're quite right. That can be. I have not had that kind of reviews yet. I fairly new also in the job. It's 2 years ago, and I think that's a very important point as well, because you can also see it as a place to ridicule other competitors within the research environment, or the people you dislike, or the current or the approaches to science that you don't like, and then it comes, as you say, overtly subjective. I think that's also something that we should avoid really, and sanction gravely as well. I really believe that. But at the same time, I think I took a course some years ago, many years ago actually, when I was a student, where I did a review course, which was a little bit more like practical. How do you do a good review? And the first thing that we was told was that we should think about the reader. And that was actually it's very simple, actually, I think, but it's something that many people, I think, also if you're trained in academia, that's maybe not the first thing you do. If you work in journalism, that's what you always do. I mean, if you're a trained journalist, you think about the reader and so on. But we think about, now I should be very careful about what I say. It should be really kind of, and I shouldn't say too much, not too little, and really kind of balance my words. And I think that's of course right. We should not be overly subjective or just write anything randomly or unsubstantial or unsupported by the facts in any ways. But we should maybe also kind of think a little bit more about the reader. Who will be the reader of this review, and how can that be of interest? So it's somewhere in between, like, should we see, being a little bit bold also as a writer to make an interesting text, but at the same time not be, to take the easy points or some easy conclusions or attack unsubstantially people, or do stuff like that. But I think a lot of reviewers, in my opinion, could really earn a lot from kind of think about the reader of this review, think it as a piece of text that should be written. That's like the purpose of it. And I think it's interesting when I came into this job 2 years ago, at the first editorial board meeting, I asked also why should we have this? Why do we have a book review section in this journal? And people was, well, it's what we have always had it. It's like we're supposed to, and it's tradition and so on. And I think we should have some better arguments of it. And I think the argument should also be that it can really kind of open up the whole academic fields, because we know what's going on and see in the shorter formats, because people doesn't read everything. And I spent, maybe particularly in time like these where people don't have so much time as they used to, at least that's what we think. It's really a good way to be engaged with what goes on, and that also demands that it's written in an interesting, accessible way.
Yeah, I totally agree that the best reviews have the target audience, or the reader, in mind, and while also situating the book in a larger context. And the genre of book reviews is, okay, we can ask why do we do this? And it is because, like you mentioned, it opens up a discussion of new new books in this area, either if it's research books or more targeted towards students. And it's also someone who takes new books seriously and offers a different take than all the promotion material that often follows new launches. Yeah. Should we head on to the next slide?
I think so. I think so. Let's do that.
Present our first dilemma, of course. As book review editors, Jonathan and I are both immensely grateful for our book reviewers who do this unpaid work on their spare time, because, of course, similar to article reviews, the book review has it lacks a official status in any evaluation system. I have never experienced my administrators asking me at the end of the year, okay, how many book reviews did you write this year? Mm-hmm. It's you count the articles, the book chapters, conference papers, etc. So it lacks any official or formal recognition in the evaluation or telekant systems that we talk about in Norway, at least.
Absolutely, and I think it's a part of a bigger point where we could say that within these journal system that we have, the only thing that is actually really being kind of acknowledged is the articles, the scientific articles. The rest is more or less unpaid work, right? I mean, we get the glory, but we don't get the much else of being. I mean, we cannot put in some kind of, system that I'm a book review editor, or I've written a book review, or even an editor. I don't know if you have that in Norway, but I also think that's really something that is overlooked immensely, that you don't get any kind of credit for editorial work in general. If you do a themed issue, or if you're part of a board or so on, it might look great on the CV, but it's not something that is kind of structurally kind of put into a frame where you actually get points or credits, or it's seen as a part of the job. It's what you do in your free time.
Yeah, and people, when reviewing a book, say it takes a lot of time to read it, and reflect and write a good review. So it's not something that people do in an afternoon. So it's maybe we can kind of praise these unsung heroes of there are book reviewers that volunteer their time to do this. Yeah.
Absolutely, I think we are immensely grateful for that work. And I also know some of the reviewers, they accept to review a book, or they propose to review a book, and then at the end they kind of think, oh no, I have just 600 pages I have to read, and I also have class tomorrow, and I have to an article, and I have to pick up the kids and so on. And I think it's so I know it's a lot of work, and particularly if it's a book that you maybe not live up to your expectations as much as you had hoped or anticipated, then it can really be a long and tough task to finish it. And I think, but so we are very, very grateful, and we really also, I think, call for a greater kind of recognition, more broadly, official or more generally, for the book reviews in general, because it is a kind of a way of keeping this scientific debate going.
Yeah, I agree. So let's see, and this also connects to our second dilemma, which has to do with the nature of our research communities, that at least in a Norwegian context is fairly small. Our book reviews are written on Norwegian books written by Norwegian researchers, which is in itself a very, very small community. So we have, when I look for a reviewer to a book, a lot of the work has to do with, okay, who can do this that are not too close to the author, who hasn't worked too close with him or her, or not working in the same department. So finding this kind of distance is perhaps often a challenge. And this might pose a challenge to the reviewer as well. How easy is it to write a critical review of your colleagues' work? It might not be very, and this might particularly be true for younger researchers. If you are an established researcher with long experience, then I don't know, perhaps it's easier to handle this kind of this conflict of interest. I don't know. What's your experience, Jonathan?
I think that is very true, and also we do both book reviews within like the broader context of media studies from around the world, mainly from the Anglo-Saxon communities. And then we have also the Danish reviews, and particularly for that, for the Danish books. And we also tend to prioritize those a little bit because we're like one of the, it's like our job as a Danish journal also to kind of really favor that dimension. And here I completely recognize the dilemma you explain. And particularly maybe I had a recent example with a recent book in Danish with a lot of media theory, an anthology, a really big one, with a lot of all the professors more or less who were in there. And so if you give that to like some young PhD student, and then how would that seem like for your future career to do that? And then I also thought, what about to give it to, there were a few professors who were not in it. What if you give it to one of them? Would they kind of have some maybe attitudes, preconceived attitudes towards the book because they were not in it as some of the only ones in the whole community? So it's also this kind of, it's really kind of, a complicated family relations where you have to like make everyone happy. And it's, I think it will solve itself at some point, and we'll try to figure out a good way to do with that. But it's always something that we really have to think about. And you know, people put a lot of effort into the work they do here, so they're of course also a little bit touchy about if people criticize them unfairly, as they might feel. But here again, maybe it's also to the way that you talk about the book could also be in different way. Maybe you should also highlight that you don't have to say this book is bad. It's but maybe say it's presents one perspective. I was maybe hoping on this, or why didn't it include that as well? Could have been interesting to see some of the dilemmas, or wasn't that aspect of the book developed more theoretically? Or I think you can also give criticism in ways that are maybe not as direct or as harsh as you sometimes see it when you see book reviews in journals of, you know, in newspapers and so on. But it is, I think it is a problem, of course, within the larger communities. It's also I think it is absolutely much less problematic, because there is this distance with the international research community. But
yeah. Yeah, and I don't necessarily see it as a problem, but it's a dynamic that's kind of exists in the genre. And of course, you're not the anonymous reviewer number 2 that's infamous for giving harsh criticism. But it's I agree with what you're saying. It's all about taking the book seriously on its own terms and discussing it in relation to what it contributes to the field. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. But it can be very complicated to find out that kind of balance when we have these kind of small communities. Absolutely.
Okay, how are we doing? Let's see. Why are reviews important after all? Because I think we both agree that book reviews are an important genre.
Most certainly.
Yeah, and we touched upon some of the aspects that's the reason why, and it's also it can be a good place to start writing academically if you're in the beginning of your career, trying to write. It is, at least in my journal or our journal, a short format, about 1,000 words, give or take. So many of the early career researchers that I approach do this as a kind of one of their ways of starting to write academically. I don't know, what's your experience?
Yeah, I have a lot of those as well, and I have already experienced one who started out by writing a review and then came on, and the next number after, she did an article that was also, I think, a way in for her. And I think that's a very good way to do it. And also, I think if you do a PhD, you will very often have like a lot of books you have to read, or to get a kind of overview of a new field that you're kind of emerged into. And here it can also be a really good way to maybe do a kind of mini literature review, where you kind of maybe take a new book that's come out, and then also within the review kind of situate it within the broader landscape of the state of the art literature that you have to discuss and anyway. And this way it will be some kind of initiation to that, and at the same time it will also be a way maybe to put something down in writing that is maybe a shorter, a more easy format that could be also forces you to kind of draw some lines and make some conclusions, which I think can contribute to the work that follows when you go on to write academic articles and so on.
Yeah, and you also get an audience for your work. I don't have the numbers at hand, but book reviews are one of our popular genres in our journal, at least in terms of reads and downloads. So book reviews are being read?
Yeah, they always at the end, right? It's like in the newspaper where you have like the television programs and the comics and in the final pages. It's a little bit like the roll of the review, something that people they maybe not always admit they have read, but they always, I think there's a lot of curiosity also about it within, because academics are very curious people also about who has published a new book. Is it good? Is it bad? What is it about? Is it relevant for me, and so on, right? So I think it's true that it's really a lot of people. We can also see that really read those reviews as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And if, regarding the how-to guide in the last point here, how can you get started writing book reviews? In my experience, being a book review editor is kind of the opposites of the article editors, where you kind of have to filter through an array of submitted articles. The book review editor's job is more of a seeking out the potential book reviewers. Who could I approach who would like to write a review of this book? So in the rare occurrences that people approach me and say, okay, this new book is coming out, can I please write a review of it? Then it's Christmas and a birthday at the same time. It's very welcome, and those are often the some of the best reviews as well, because people are engaged and write an inspired book review.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. So if you want to review a book, choose one that you find very interesting and you think you really want to read thoroughly and think and write about and verbalize your thoughts. And then it can really be a good way. Also, sometimes for us a little bit more experienced academics, who rarely, I feel at least, get the time to really just sit down and open a book. That's what I thought, life was about when I was going into academics, right? That it's, oh, then you go like 30, then you get a job, and then you can just sit down and read all those books and, have clever thoughts about them and so on. But actually, modern day academia is a little bit more strict, I think we all acknowledge, and we have to systematize everything. And if we read something, it really has to be something that we really want to value, and we have to use it for an article and blah, 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 and so on. That's often the way I feel anyway. But here you can maybe also get this chance to really force yourself to really read a book all the way through and have something to say about it. And you can always do it also if you have it for an upcoming article or for something else, or for maybe a theoretical discussion somewhere. It can be a really good way also to do that. And as you said, Eva, I love those where we don't have to convince people and bribe them to do reviews. And actually in this current issue is coming out this summer, I've actually had 3 reviews from people just turning up on my doorsteps and saying, I want to review this, and that's fabulous. So all were really good, as you also say. I think that's maybe the best way to do those as well. Because at the same time, I had a book I sent out to an editor in October, and we had a deadline, I think, here for in the beginning of the year, and I haven't heard from him, and I haven't written various emails. And he was like, where I received the book and then kind of just send it out to him, say, would you do this? Oh yeah, okay, fine. And yeah, and it's understandable. I think people are very busy, have a lot of stuff to do, so I understand that people find it difficult to find the time to do this. But it's so also this is I think an invitation more broadly to say to people who have an idea about starting writing academically, I have a book they really want to review in the beginning, in the middle, or in the end of the career. Please write an email. We respond very quickly to those kind of emails where you say, I want a book and so on. And yeah. And also, we said before, it was actually unpaid work, but you actually do get the book in most cases with us. Don't you get you send the book out as well, right, Eva?
Yeah, of course. So that's a little bonus. Yeah.
So you have something, cultural capital you can put on your wall in the at least.
A carrot on the stick. Or yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be our closing comments. Please do approach us and volunteer to write book reviews.
Thank you, Ivar, Jon, and Jonathan. Very relevant points. Maybe you can stop sharing your screen now, so we can be seen on the screen. Good. So very relevant points, and I can definitely recognize them as a book review editor for another third Nordic journal, Nordicom Review. This unpaid dilemma of unpaid work, or maybe you could say aspirational work, with the high hopes for learning something new and being more established as a scholar. And maybe this is why it's also a generational question. Junior scholars are more attracted by book review assignments typically than the senior scholars. Maybe, I don't know, but at the same time, this dilemma of who am I to review this, I can understand that it's quite intimidating for junior scholars, because it's a demanding task to contextualize a new piece of work. You really have to know the field. But we have a couple of questions to you as well. So first, about the process, to make it a bit more concrete. If I now want to review a book, at which point should I take contact with or contact you? Is it before reading it, or having read it already? Or do you have a list of books online to choose among, or how does it work? Maybe you have different practices for that as well. So please tell about the process.
Well, regarding approaching, yes, please, both before or during or after you've read the book, anything is welcome. We monitor new books from the kind of well-known publishers that publish books in our area, and try to find reviewers for those books. But of course, there might be some books that come out not on other publishers that we might not know about. So I have had people approach me with a book that I didn't know was coming and asking to write a review. And that was very welcome. But I don't have a list of upcoming books on the web that people can choose from now. But the people are very welcome to approach me at any point in reading or planning to read a book.
What about you, Jonathan?
We used to have a list, but we've changed it a little bit now, so now it's not on, and that was also because I felt there was a lot of books not being reviewed, and then some of them were really old, so like 5-year-old books standing there still. It should be so we have been we're usually contacted also. We're of course monitoring a lot of the places where we usually review books. A lot of the editors also contact us sometimes from some of the big publishing houses, both in Denmark and abroad. But there are also so many now, I think, of different kind of publishing houses, that it can be a little bit difficult for us to have a complete overview. And there are also so many kind of subfields that might be relevant actually to our journal. So I think it's a little bit difficult sometimes to track, and people should always feel welcome to contact us, and as soon as possible, I think, also because then we can kind of plan the publication of it, come with a relevant deadline. We only have 2 issues per year, so it's also, if you miss one deadline, it might be a little bit long before you get the next one. And sometimes we even have themed issues, and here it can be very interesting also for us to have themed book reviews. We try to do that. It can be a little bit difficult sometimes, but it's also interesting to do that, I think. And then very practically, if you want to have the book, that it may be also a good idea to contact us before you buy it and read it. So it's make a little bit more sense that way as well. Yeah. Also, we don't refund books because we cannot do that. We don't have the fund to do that. But we can, if we get free copies, we'll of course handle them out.
On which basis do you choose the books, or do you have any restrictions for genres, for example, or report is not preferred, or non-fiction? What about non-fiction written by a media researcher? What's the policy there? And what about the age of the literature? How recent should it be?
Yeah, those are good questions as well. In the time I've been, it's only been academic books solely, and as we maybe have shed the light on before, it's not like we have a ton of reviews that we just have to like select, but we really kind of try to push and pick everything that we can get our hands on of reviews. So it's we haven't had that kind of problems. I think we also do, for instance, books that are kind of maybe more for educational use. Also to, for instance, new educational books in media studies, various fields of that within our within our journals, and these might be have a should we say a softer or a lighter academic appeal or touch, but I think they're still very relevant to the field. And also it's interesting for many of our readers to know, because all of them teach more or less, that you have this kind of new book coming out on that I might be able to use in this course or that course, and so on. So academic books and educational books.
Yeah, that's our main categories as well. Research-based books and educational books for media studies, journalism students, etc. There might be some fringe books that we kind of have a discussion in the editorial board. Okay, is this inside or outside our scope? And that happens, but usually it's fairly easy. It might be hard to describe what kind of books we review, but we know it when we see it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because nowadays academics feel, I think they're really kind of overlapping a lot in various places, right? So we, for instance, also have had books on films, on new trends in films. And some people might say that film studies is not within media studies, but we also call Journal of Communication and Media Studies. So it's maybe our scope is a little bit broad. I don't know, but I have not been like said by some of the other editors have not said to me, this is not a book relevant for us. And we also have a really kind of broad editorial board where people come from a lot of different backgrounds and are interested in everything from YouTube to queer studies to journalism and so on. So it's really kind of broad. I tend to see it rather broad, yeah.
What about the Nordicness? You are both examples of Nordic journals, and you have a special responsibility to advance Nordic academic research, national academic research as well. Is it a requirement that the author of the book to be reviewed has to have a Nordic connection, or the topic or the angle in the book has to have a Nordic connection or something like that?
Yes, I think it's our policy that since we are the Norwegian Journal of Media Studies, the majority of books that we review are written by Norwegian authors or have significant contributions in the form of book chapters in an edited books by Norwegian authors, or it might be written by a non-Scandinavian author on a very Norwegian topic, but I can't remember to have seen any books like that. So it's mainly the policy is that it has to have a significant Norwegian contribution in some kind of form.
Our policy is a little different, it's a little broader. So we say that we tend to prioritize Danish publications for the same reasons Ivar says. We're the only who kind of who does it. So we have to like see to the new Danish books and so on are being reviewed. But we also are open, and I think we have maybe 50-50, something like that, of books from around the world. And here it can be everything. We have a new book on from cultural studies in and post-feminism in the UK, and a lot of other stuff. Also, a lot of digital topics that are very global are being reviewed. So we have a lot of different kind of topics as well. But we tend to prioritize the Danish, yeah.
This has all been so interesting. Something that occurred to me when you were discussing about what is a good and a bad review, and that a quote unquote bad review is sort of just purely descriptional, and it goes through, this is chapter 1, this is chapter 2, which is a pitfall that even you yourselves have fallen into, as you said. So I was thinking of what could be some concrete tips or strategies to avoid that trap. And I think, for example, you mentioned formatting it or treating it as a sort of mini literature review. That could be one strategy. But if you didn't have the time or the expertise, like if you were a starting out researcher, what could you do to avoid that? For example, should you start with a question or write your conclusion first, or any ideas?
Maybe just say that the descriptive part should be like one paragraph, maybe 10, 15 lines, something like that, right? So you can say there are different kind of points in the book, but really try to narrow these points down. What's the essence of that, and how is that different from what one might perceive, what's in the literature? And I think what you say about the question in the opening can also be interesting. Usually many of the books we have, they kind of also within these kind of studies touch on either perspectives that are novel, or themes that are kind of novel. We're not doing archaeology here, for instance. It's usually a lot of media studies has some kind of resonance to the what's going on in society more broadly. And here you can maybe, I think that could be a wonderful way to say that this book might be very specific, which many academic books are, but it actually revolves around a bigger topic of our time. So the literature review can also maybe be more, doesn't have to be like an academic literature review, but maybe also a discussion of a broader theme or dilemma or whatever it could be in our times.
Yeah, and also to I think you mentioned this earlier, Jonathan, but having the reader or the intended audience of the book in mind. In what way does this book contribute to either the academic discussion or the developmental methodologies, or what kind of value does this book have for this and this audience? Yeah, I think.
And also, if you do, for instance, an educational book, you can also then think about the use of the book. Who might it be relevant for? Who might it not be relevant for? Which kind of courses, which kind of academic levels might it be interesting for, and so on. So you maybe expand a little bit on that as well, and come with some concrete examples from the book also, where you could see this could work very well here, but this might not work very well here. I think that could be a strategy as well.
Good ideas, good strategies. We need to wrap up in a few minutes, but one last brief question for those curious out there. You mentioned that the book review is an overlooked genre, and I have a feeling that book review editors are probably an overlooked job. So approximately how much time do you spend on the book review editing as part of your overall job? Is it full time or is it a percentage?
Of the time we spend in the journal or in
Yeah.
the journal? Okay, yeah.
Mm.
It's more or less, for me, it's more or less most of the stuff I do tend to involve the book reviews. And in hours, I don't know. For many of the other editors, it's kind of, they have a lot of work in certain points of the year when an issue is either being started or it's being finished and they have to like wrap up the issue. And there are different kind of practical language related tasks in terms of that. The job as a book editor is a little bit more like an email here, an email there, all year round, either communication with editors or with potential authors. You have to like also really think about the deadlines and write to people a month before the deadline. So because usually I've forgotten everything about the deal you made, and you have to, if they have to read the book and then write the thing, you have to remind them, of course, in a very polite manner, because we love our reviewers.
Yes, we do. And yeah, I have kind of the same role. My only task in the Norwegian Journal of Media Study is being a book editor. There are other editors who deal with the academic articles, and the amount of time varies a bit, but it's kind of spread out when I have the time. And the challenge, of course, is to think far enough ahead, so that because it takes time to find a reviewer, get the book shipped out if it's not online open access, and to read a 500-page book and write a review. So, and we have kind of, after the review comes in, then it's a process before it's published. So the challenge is to think far enough ahead so that the book reviews stay current, that we don't that we get reviews of books while they're still kind of fresh. Yeah.
And thank you for putting the light on us overlooked editor review.
Of course.
Review editor.
Part of our mission as well. Highlight the whole.
We expect a lot of attention.
Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us. We'll continue here. You who are following us, stay connected with the academic book review community at Nord Media Network. We are going to go through different aspects of book reviewing in the upcoming weeks. And here, a good advice that we have learned today is to get into contact with your editor. If you are considering to write a review, you can always ask for advice and instructions. So we wish the best of luck for you as book review editors and also as book reviewers. And we'll see each other later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Bye-bye.